Hey everyone, welcome back to Dungeon Brew. We are continuing our series on Thieves Guilds, and today we are talking about the Master of Veils. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Dungeon Brew.
Hey everyone, we are talking about the Master of Veils today on Dungeon Brew, and the Master of Veils is in charge of making sure that the guild flies below radar by creating a front for the guild for legal or semi-legal activities that allow the guild to hide the illegal activities that they do in the background. Usually this involves gambling expeditions and brothel jobs. Joshua, you want to get us started with a little bit more about what we're looking at for the Master of Veils and the types of jobs that he handles?
You just gave my entire introduction, so nope.
Okay. That's it.
Yeah. So the Master of Veils, as you said, he does a lot of the fronts for the guild. So he's in charge of looking at what legal businesses he can structure or semi-legal businesses he can structure within the framework of the laws and regulations that are already established within the city. That, like you said, it could be gambling, it could be brothels, but it could be something that's even a little bit more just, I guess, on the up and good, like maybe an exploration guild type of thing, where they're going out and they're exploring, ruins and pulling together artifacts. I know one of the campaigns I ran, there was a hunters guild that was similar in this, where they just went out and they traversed, dangerous lands and went across, seas and oceans and forests that hadn't been looked at beforehand, and just kind of go out and scope and scrape the land for whatever it is that they can do, while also running those illegal things on the other side that they can essentially shift, numbers to make it look like it's in their favor.
Yeah, it gives the expedition thing, I think, is a very good way of the guild having an excuse for suddenly having things like magic items, cursed items, an influx of gold that is unexplained. So they basically can just write off whatever they want to if they're required to when coming back to the city and saying, oh yeah, look, this is all the stuff we found. I also think that the expedition in particular is a very good way of creating an excuse to include adventuring parties, just kind of as either a patsy or a front in general, and going, oh, this adventuring party is coming through town, and we really need to go do this smuggling job, so we're going to hire them to go to this random ruin, and we're just going to send them inside the ruin, and while they're inside the ruin, we're going to do the smuggling job on the outside, and it's just going to be the meeting spot, which I think would be really fun, because if you're, as the GM, you send them inside, and when they come back out, suddenly the people who sent you inside have all these crates of stuff that they didn't have when you went inside the ruin. And so the adventure party is like, where did all this come from?
We found it.
Don't worry about that. So I think the expedition is a really fun one for a guild, but that's not to say that you couldn't find reasons to use the gambling or the brothel jobs as well. These would basically just be ways for the guild to bring income into the guild, and then it's a there's a lot of money that's exchanging hands. There's reasons for all of these things. The gambling is the same way, where it's like if you have a casino or something like that, they go, oh yeah, we got this magic item because this one guy hawked it to us because he wanted to keep gambling, and so we ended up with this magic item, and that's what's going on here. Or we have this huge influx of coin, and it's from the gambling that's going on. It has nothing to do with all these illegal activities that we're not doing in the background. And I think any of those things, which a lot of those I think are dependent on the legality within the city. So, gambling may not be legal within the city, brothels may not be legal within the city, but if the city allows those things, they're good front jobs. And if those things fail, they can always just have a dry cleaning business.
It's like you're just reading my mind throughout this entire video. I was like, yeah, so those aren't legal. Here's have a china shop. But yeah, you can have that front be you can oh, China, porcelain.
I see.
Porcelain shop. But yeah, the matter of it is that this particular individual, the Master of Veils, is looking for what legal means he can set up typical ideas. Maybe he's working with who's in charge of laundering that we talked about, but we haven't got to them yet. The purser, probably.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
essentially-
Yeah, laundering. Well, Master of Veils will do laundering, but he works closely with the Master Purser because the Master Purser is in charge of the treasury.
yeah.
And then he works with the Master Fence, like we talked about in the last video, because the Master Fence is in charge of dealing with the illegal goods. So the Veil is basically just running the actual front of the business for the most part.
Yeah, and then making sure that everything's being funneled through in a way that's not going to alert anyone that might be looking more closer into those dealings. But it could just be an inn. I mean, it could be a playhouse. There's a number of different things that you could have fit essentially that front for this individual to be running within the city in whatever way you think is necessary.
Right.
I think that sometimes looking at particular jobs for members can be challenging. Like we said, the expedition is a really great job to just send them out for an adventuring party to do a number of different things to bring in goods for the guild if they're working for them. But you may also have very detailed, complex jobs of continuing to give a presentation to hide that front, or to set, the authorities off sniffing somewhere else, or to plant evidence somewhere else to make them think that another locale is the front or has some sort of association with the guild and not the particular one in question.
Yeah, and I think almost any business operates in this way, and it gives the players an opportunity for social quests. In particular, it makes it appear as that like they're going to be dealing with authorities, they're going to be dealing with real life customers. They need to present this idea of this is what this business is. This is a legitimate business, and obviously the easiest way to do that is to set up an actual legitimate business and then have other things running in the background, kind of behind the scenes type situation.
Which would be funny if that was the quest. It's like, we actually need more porcelain. You have to go out and get the actual goods that we're supposed to be selling here.
Right. Which is, I mean, it's a legitimate way of doing things, but it's also interesting because if they're doing it really well, neighboring guilds may not realize that it's a front for the business, and I think you can have some fun with that as well, where the PCs are basically in charge of maintaining the business for today, and so they're like, man, this is boring, and all of a sudden a neighboring guild tries to come into the front that they're running and tries to extort them for in what we were talking about with the Master Enforcer video, where suddenly they're on the receiving end of somebody trying to take advantage of what appears to be a legitimate business, which I think is interesting or engaging in its own way. But it could be the same thing with corrupt guards who are coming through and trying to either take money from the guild to keep the legitimate business kind of like off the books in terms of an investigatory type situation. So guards come through and they're like, listen, we know this is a front for the guild, you need to pay us if you want us to keep that silent and we don't raid you. Or the party members are trying to get in contact with the guardhouse to figure out whether or not a raid is coming. So they're trying to find people to... And this is where we get into some of the Spy Master stuff later on that we'll talk about, but like blackmailing and that type of thing. Forging documents to make sure that the front appears to be valid, those types of things. But I think that the biggest thing with the Master of Veils and the idea of these... fronts that they use for the guild is that it ties into, I think, just about every other type of job that can be done to try and keep the activities of the guild concealed.
I was just getting ready to say that the Master of Veils probably works with every other master very closely, and you can essentially combo jobs with them to make sure that certain things are being followed through. And I know that we haven't really hit the nail on the head yet that your front can also serve illegal activities in that same area. So maybe you have a brothel there's a certain level of what they're allowed to do, but now they are offering additional services that go up and beyond what the law allows you to do in the back rooms. Or maybe you have the gambling. So there's particular types of gambling that you can do, but they have illegal gambling activities that are down in the basement that are away from everything. That it's your job to essentially manage. Maybe fight clubs or something that you can gamble on that aren't allowed in the city, but you offer it here. So it's always interesting to take whatever your front is and exceed it to that next level. So the illegal activity is actually associated with the front. It's just behind the veil.
Right. No, and I think that that's a really good point, because the idea of things like you said, like additional services from the brothel, fighting pits, animal fights, anything like that. And when it comes to gambling, that could be very lucrative for the guild, but is still actually illegal. And providing the front for that as well is also super useful. And I think that that's part of where the Master of Veil shines, is the ability to take the front and then bring it to the next level, which is also something that the players, again, can participate in, simply because if there are, they're doing fighting pits, and they want to bring in these exotic animals, they might be responsible for going out and capturing the animals for the Master of Veils. They might be responsible for smuggling them in. They could be responsible for any number of things that allows them to do jobs on behalf of the Master of Veils specifically, without necessarily tying into any of the other masters directly. But I think as we're talking through some of the other masters, both in the previous videos and in the upcoming ones, many of these are going to come along the same lines. You're going to do an assassination job because somebody has keyed in on what the front is, and you've got to get rid of that person before it's reported. You have to kidnap somebody. You have to rob somebody to get rid of the documents that reveal what's going on with this particular business. Like, you really can get into a number of different jobs that tie into preserving the secrecy of the guild on behalf of the Master of Veils.
Yeah, I was just thinking, it's like, 𝐷𝐠𝐤𝐺𝐤 Porgy got beat by Bertha down in the fighting pits, and now he's ready to spill all because he was embarrassed about it. So now you got to work with the Master of Assassins, or even in order to go blackmail him to get him to stop whatever it is that he's doing. But you can also have jobs specifically to running the illegal activities, or behind that front as well, with the Master of Veils. So maybe you're in charge of running the fighting pits. Maybe you're managing the illegal activities in the brothel. Maybe you are conducting and orchestrating the actual expeditions and choosing from a list of mercenaries to go on those expeditions. There's a lot of fun jobs that you can arrange behind the scenes to, again, that don't have to be necessarily involved in the way that first comes to mind.
Right. Yeah, I think this is the opportunity to get really creative, I think, in general, with the way that you come up with jobs, because this is again all about the secrecy of the guild, maintaining its existence within the shadows, so that the government isn't aware of it, or if they're aware of it, they think that it's something minor. They're not concerned about it. There's the other guild in the other part of the city that's the bigger concern, because they operate more openly than you do. And so whatever's going on here is like, they have a brothel, and we know that they do stuff in the back rooms they really shouldn't, but it's not that big of a deal. And so long as you can maintain that level of anonymity, then the government is no longer paying attention. And doing jobs to maintain that, I think, is the most important part of the Master of Veils and what it is that he does for the guild.
So again, we're talking about tabletop role-playing games, and we're not educating you. All right, John, anything else that you would like to add with this?
I don't think so. I think that's all I've got for them.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us again here on Dungeon Brew. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you all next time.
Dungeon Brew.